All right, well, in today's video, I'm going to talk about ways to avoid night and weekend certification exam studying. Okay. Now, if you have either, taken some certification exams, have been working on them, or maybe if you haven't taken them yet, most of the time it requires a significant amount of studying time. And most of the people who are taking certification exams have a full time job. And so the reality is, most people end up spending their nights and weekends studying. So you finish college, you get a job, and then you go back to studying and spending nights and weekends. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and share with you some ways that you can avoid having to do some of that night and weekend studying. Either, shorten it down or maybe even avoid it altogether, because I'm going to give you some different options as part of the video as you hang around to talk about that. Now, I'm familiar with this because I went through this myself. So when I was taking the CPA exam, when I took the CIA exam, I've got some other certifications that I've gotten over the years as well. So I've gone through this where I had a full-time job or I was a full-time student when I took the CPA exam. And I had to find time in order to study for those exams because I was still working, like I said, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. So that happened for me when I took my certification exams. It also happened when I was getting my master's. Because I was already an executive, I was working 50 to 60 hours a week. And so I did a nighttime MBA program through USC. And for 3 years, I was working pretty much, or, going to class or studying pretty much every night for about 3 years. So I know what it's like. And, I understand, I hear from people all the time about how, the night and weekend studying for them ends up becoming a lot. Okay. And so I want to go through and kind of talk about that, talk about some things that you can do to avoid some of that as well. Okay. Now, to kind of start with, I just want to level set for everybody who either isn't familiar or maybe you're going through it and you're thinking, my goodness, I'm spending a lot of time studying. And there's a reason for that. And I'm just going to use the Certified Internal Auditor or CIA certification as an example, because I know a lot of people in internal audit, that is the one you're going for or think you want to go for. And so I want to talk to you just a little bit about the reality of what it actually takes. So the CIA exam has 3 different exams. Okay, you have to pass all 3 exams before you can get your CIA. And these are tricky exams. They're really tough. They're what I call an inch deep and a mile wide, which is hard for a lot of people because there's so much information that could be asked on the exam. That you just find yourself studying a lot of different things, not knowing what might be on the particular exam that you take. Okay. And so because of that, and like I said, I've taught CIA review courses for many years. I'm very familiar with it. And the books that go along with it are literally about, if you stack them all up, they're about, this high, higher than my head. Okay. So there's a lot of information, a lot of reading. And the reality is, like I said, for most people spend at least 100 hours studying for each exam. And so, if you're lucky, you're only going to spend maybe 300 hours in total studying. But a lot of people spend more time than that. Okay. And I'm going to, like I said, hold on until the end of the video because I'm going to share with you some other ways to avoid some of this studying as well, because I know you have life. You have, friends, family, people that you love that your time is taken away from when you're studying so much. Okay. So a couple of things to begin with. One thing that I find is people overstudy. Okay. They feel like, well, I'm not quite ready for the exam yet, so I'm going to keep studying until I really feel comfortable. And so that 100 hours ends up turning into 200, 300, 400, 500 hours of studying for one exam until people finally feel like, okay, now I think I know everything. I'm comfortable to do it. And so one reason why people are spending so much time is they are over studying. And overstudying can come from a few different places. One is that you feel like you have to know everything that is on the exam. Now, I told you for the CIA exam, you will not know everything that's on there. There will be some questions that you do not know. That's just the way it is, right? So, one thing to avoid is not feeling like you have to know everything. So again, you only have to, you don't have to get 100%. You don't even have to get a 90% on the exam. And so what I find is, having people just really focus. I like to tell people do it in a 3-month cycle, which means you're going to study really hard for 3 months. You're going to study as much as you reasonably can in 3 months, and then you're going to take the exam. Now, again, a lot of people listening to this are going to be like, whoa, I'm not going to be ready after 3 months. Well, you're going to probably be pretty ready at that point. You're never going to feel like you're 100% on, and that's okay. That's part of the exam. Okay. So reducing your time into 3-minute blocks means that, again, if I look at it and say, I'm only going to spend 100 hours, I'm going to do it over 3 months. So you divide it out. That's a little over 30 hours each month. Then you can schedule that time on your calendar, right, to be able to do it and just stick to it. Take the exam at that point. Now, again, these exams are for CIA are trickier. Only about 40% of people pass. If you don't pass the first time, then you just do it again, right? And the reality is most people who are studying for these exams have to take them multiple times. Okay. Another reason why people spend so much time studying is that they start and they stop. And so what does this mean? Well, they start off, they're really excited. They work really hard for a week or two, and then something happens in their life, right? There's some family issue that comes up. Maybe there's something with your kids, or you go on vacation, or who knows, something comes up. And so all of a sudden, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, you haven't studied. And so you pick it up again, and you're really good for the first couple of weeks, and then something happens. And I understand, right? This is one of the hardest things about the CIA exam in particular is, life happens. And when life happens, right, sometimes your studying gets stopped. And so what happens is after 90 days, we lose about 90% of what we learned. It's a thing called the forgetting curve. And you don't have to believe it's there, but it's real. There's been scientific studies done about that. Okay. Now, so what ends up happening is somebody, like I said, they start off really good, a week or 2 or 3, and then they skip a month, and they're like, man, okay. They go back and they start where they were at to begin with. They do really good for a week or 2 or 3, and then something happens, and then they start over again. And so what ends up happening is sometimes people, when I'm messaging with people, I'll say, hey, have you taken any of the exams? And they're like, no, not yet. Or yes, I have. I failed some. I passed these, kind of whatever. I'm just trying to have a conversation with them. And what a lot of times will happen then is I'm like, well, when do you plan to take the next exam? And people will give me a date a year out. And I'm thinking, right? Again, what I told you before, the 90 days is better, right? Because after a year, you will have forgotten almost everything you studied for. And so again, right, as you start and stop your studying, as you re-study the same things over and over again, after a while, all of a sudden that 100 hours can become 500 hours very quickly. And again, that's 500 hours that you're away from your family or friends or people that you love, right? Which I don't want you to have to do. So another way to avoid so much of the studying is to actually be consistent and block out a particular period of time. Like I said, I suggest for the CIA 2 to 3 months, and then just really focus on studying during that particular time. Okay. And again, things are probably going to come up at work. Things might come up in your personal life, but you have to be consistent and stick to a particular schedule if you don't want to spend way more time studying than you need to. Okay. So that's a little bit about, some suggestions for avoiding if you're taking the CIA exam. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, and I'm going to tell you now, is there are other globally recognized certifications for internal audit. A lot of people might not know about them, but they do exist. They're globally recognized. And the nice thing is, you don't have to spend hundreds of hours studying for these certifications. In fact, most of the certifications you can earn in about 40 to 50 hours, right? So you can get a whole certification in 40 to 50 hours of studying instead of spending hundreds of hours over the course of years. Now, if I ask you, right, and again, you're looking at this saying, oh my gosh, if I take the CIA exam, I'm going to be spending, 500, 1,000 hours, something like that. I don't know if I can do that. And some of you might be sitting there saying that, right? That's a big thing. I don't know that I can do the whole thing. Well, if you break it up, right, then it's a little bit smaller chunks at a time. Or you can say, you know what, for a week or two, or maybe a month, I can block out 40 to 50 hours of time. That's easier for me to do. And so if that's easier for you to do, then maybe consider some of the certifications from cRisk Academy. And so I put a link in the description, and it's on my screen here too, ondemand.criskacademy.com, where you can go out, you can take the training course, you can take the exam, and you can be done in literally 40 to 50 hours, maybe 60 hours, right? Depending on who you are. But effectively, because the tests are not tricky, all they're doing is making sure that you actually went through the training and understand the basic concepts. They're deeper too. I told you before that, the CIA exam is 1 inch deep and about a mile wide. Well, these other certifications are about a mile deep and an inch wide, which means you can focus your attention on the areas that are really important, and they're practical as well. So they're things that you can actually use in your job right away. And so, again, because of that, it makes it much easier for you to avoid hundreds or thousands of hours of studying and be able to get a certification much quicker. In fact, you could get 2 or 3 or 4 certifications from cRisk Academy in less time and actually for less money than it would take you to go through the CIA exam over the course of years, and paying anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 for that by the time you pay all the retesting fees and things like that. So I hope that's helpful. Like I said, I wanted to provide you with some context here, because this is what I find often. When I talk to people, is they say, you know what, I tried the CIA exam. I did it for a year or two. I took a couple of the exams. I failed them. And, I just don't have time to spend studying. I just, my kids are little. I've got a job that's demanding, all these different reasons. And I understand, because I have been there as well, right? And so that's why, again, I'm trying to offer you some suggestions for today. Again, if you want to do CIA exam, that is fine, right? I shared with you a few ways of at least reducing the amount of time that you would be spending on it. if you don't overstudy, if you set yourself, definitive timelines and stick to it, and if you don't allow roadblocks to get in the way. Because when you do and you start studying over and over again, all of a sudden that goes into many, 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 many hours. Okay. Or again, you can choose a cRisk Academy certification. You can block out 40 to 50 hours of your time over the course of a month or 2 or 3, which is much easier to do. I know for me, when I was going through, my kids were, at least for the CIA exam in particular, I had little kids at home. And so, it was hard for me to study once I got home, right? Because there were demands from my wife and from the kids, and I had to do this and do that. And so I chose to get up a little earlier and go into the office early each day and spend about 2 hours a day doing the studying, because I'm more of a morning person myself anyway. But again, there's different ways that you can get around this, but you really can avoid some of the time studying, and that's really what I hope and want for you, because I know what it's like to be away from friends and family and people that you love, and they don't understand. A lot of times that strains people's relationships as well. And so again, today gave you some different options to be able to help reduce that, while you are also still progressing in your career. Because as we know, certifications are an important part of your career. In fact, I think in the recent study, it was something like 85% of people either require a certification or strongly encourage having a certification if you are in internal audit. So again, whether you pick CIA, something else, one of the cRisk Academy certifications, that's up to you. Do your research, decide which one is best for you. But as I said, especially if you want to really reduce the time studying, the cRisk Academy options are very, 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 very good in making sure you don't have to take that time away. So with that, I'm going to sign out for today, and we'll see you on the next live video.